Hey, David Brewster here with an episode of Scales and Tales, and this is Exotic Scales. And I've had a lot of students over the years that have asked me about exotic scales and modes and, how to tap into some of those, kind of unusual, tonalities and sounds that you hear in rock and hard rock and metal, classical, jazz. You can even hear this in pop music sometimes. But if you're used to kind of the traditional kind of bland world of just regular major minor scales, maybe pentatonic scales, when you first start kind of getting into exotic scales and modes, it really is exciting and it's like a breath of fresh air. It's like, oh, wow. And I know for myself, I was already listening to Malmsteen and, Marty Friedman, like the Cacophony and Megadeth and some stuff like that, and eventually got into Buckethead. But when I heard some of those sounds, I was like, what is that? That's not pentatonic, that's not normal. And I'd already kind of been exposed to diminished ideas through Randy Rhoads and Yngwie and people like that. But when I heard Hungarian Minor and Phrygian Dominant and some of this stuff, my ears just perked up. I thought, what is that? I want to learn that. The concept behind this lesson I've had for a long time, about 10 years or more. And there's actually a version of it that I had published in Guitar Player magazine last year in the August 2019 issue, the one with John 5 on the cover. And the lesson, it's called Tornado of Solos, and it's a tribute to Marty Friedman. And there we go. But Tornado of Solos is loosely based on what we're going to cover in this lesson. Now I did move this lesson into drop D tuning, and we're going to move from the key of E, which is what you'll find in Guitar Player, to the key of D, and I kind of put it in drop D. And I am showing things different. So the lesson that's in Guitar Player is not the exact same thing that's going to be in this lesson. It's just related. It's the approach. But the examples and what we're going to do is going to be completely different. So after you've worked from this video lesson, I highly recommend, jump on the Guitar Player website, or if you have that issue, work on the Guitar Player lesson, which is related to this. And it's going to move some of the ideas into a different key and dives a little bit deeper into exotic scales. To get started, we're going to begin with Aeolian, or the natural minor scale. And this is not an exotic scale. This is just the regular minor scale. But it's going to give us a starting point before we start twisting and mutating, the scale around. But D Aeolian, or the natural minor scale, that's just basically D, E, F, G, A, B flat, C, and D. Or, the root, the second, flat third, fourth, fifth, flat six, flat seven, and root. Like this. Right? Fits over, minor chords or minor seventh chords. You use that low, D-tune, low E string as a drone, you can kind of hear the flavor of that scale. Just to kind of hear what it sounds like against D. Now we could also flesh that one octave scale fingering. We could flesh that out to 2 octaves like this. Just to expand, the range of the scale and, the notes that we're including. Now that would fit best over, like an example here, like I said, minor or a minor 7 chord in the key of D. But you could also use that over, say, a 1-4-5 in the key of D minor. D minor, G minor, A minor, and then D. Right? And that would fit in that progression, very comfortably and very well. Next we have Harmonic Minor, which is Yngwie's favorite scale. And there's a ton of players out there that love Harmonic Minor. It's not just Yngwie, but he has been notoriously linked with this scale. But all we're going to do now to change Aeolian, or the natural minor, to Harmonic Minor is we're going to raise the 7th. And we've talked about this on numerous, lessons on this channel. But this is very, very common, but it is kind of the first exotic scale we're going to tap into. So D harmonic minor in that same position would look like this. And right there we just raise C natural to C sharp, and boom, you've got D harmonic minor. Right? So there's that little 1 octave shape. We could use the low E string that's tuned to D as a drone again. You know, just to really get an earful of what that sounds like against at least the root of that key. So there's the 1 octave fingering. The 2 octave fingering looks like this. And I've definitely found harmonic minor a great challenge, you know, for your fretting hand, because there are a lot of wide, you know, kind of intervallic gaps and leaps between the notes in that scale. And you can find one right there. Like right there, hitting this, you know, B flat to the C sharp to that D. And that's just one position of that scale, but that's really interesting. And then for harmonic minor, you know, we could basically use that 1, 4, 5 in D minor again, but the only difference is we're going to have D minor, you know, G minor, and then A7 or A major. So it's going to have a major 5 chord, a minor 1, but major 5, like this. Right, just a little twist to what we had with Aeolian. Up next we have Phrygian, which is the 3rd mode from the major scale. And if we compare Phrygian to Aeolian, which is where we started, you know, the natural minor scale, we'll see the only difference is it has a flat 2. So to convert Aeolian to Phrygian, just lower the 2nd. And that's that note E right there. So D Aeolian, or the natural minor scale once again, that was D, E, F, G, A, B flat, C, and D. So D Phrygian is going to be D, E flat, F, G, A, B flat, C, and D. It just has that flat 2. So just think of, you know, hard rock and metal songs where the chord riff, you know, kind of moves a half step from the root, you know, D to E flat. So there's the 1 octave fingering right there. And we could flesh out a 2 octave fingering in the same position. And as far as chord progressions and chords, I mean, we could do a minor 1 to a major flat 2, which is that E flat major right there, to a minor flat 7, which is that C minor right there. You know, that would work for Phrygian. And as far as just a single, you know, kind of static chord, we could do a minor flat 9. You know, kind of an unsettling tonality for sure, but that would fit, you know, Phrygian. Right, up next we have the close relative of Phrygian, and this is Phrygian Dominant, and this is actually the 5th mode of the harmonic minor scale, which was the 2nd scale that we looked at. And if you compare, you know, Phrygian Dominant to Phrygian, you'll see it's basically the same scale, but now, you know, instead of having D, E flat, F, G, A, B flat, and C, now we're going to basically raise this F to F sharp. So now it's D, E flat, F sharp, and then G, A, B flat, C, and D, like this. Right? And for me, me think of Laid to Rest by Lamb of God. That's basically D Phrygian Dominant, but there's a lot of examples of Phrygian Dominant. You know, Marty Friedman uses it, Yngwie taps into it. There's a ton of players. You know, it pops up in a lot of flamenco and Spanish guitar music. But that's a very sinister and dark flavor for sure. I love it. So there's the 1 octave fingering right there. 2 octave fingering. Now, as far as chords and progressions for this one, we could play a major 1, and then a major flat 2, which is that E flat major, and then a minor flat 7, which is back to that C minor again. So it's almost the same progression we had for Phrygian. It's just now we're starting with a major 1 chord. You know, something like that, and that would fit the tonality. You know, that's what we had for Phrygian. And then the Phrygian Dominant twist, you know, really brought out a different flavor. And then as far as a single chord, we could basically do a D flat 9. You know, D major flat 9. Which is really out there, but I love that tonality. The last scale we're going to look at in this lesson is Hungarian Minor. So this is D Hungarian Minor, and this is very unusual. So think of D Harmonic Minor, and we're going to raise the 4th. So we're kind of bridging Lydian and Harmonic Minor together, kind of merging those 2 scales. So it's Harmonic Minor with a sharp 11 or sharp 4, like this. You know, very unusual. So there's your D, E, and F, and then G sharp, which is your sharp 4, and then also C sharp, which is your raised 7. So the fingering's weird too, because you've got 3 chromatic notes right in a row right there. And there's a couple different ways you could finger that. But the interesting thing there is you're still kind of flirting with Harmonic Minor. But then you suddenly have that sharp 4 too, which just gives it this sick and sinister sound, which is really cool. So there's the 1 octave fingering. And then the 2 octave fingering. And it's really weird on the top too, because you got that super stretch, you know, between your 3rd and your index finger. Now, as far as chords are concerned, this is definitely going to bring up some interesting things, you know, chord-wise. You could still use and target, you know, minor major 7 and minor major 9 chords, you know, like we talked about with Harmonic Minor. You know, that minor major 9 right there, you could definitely use that. And that would fit, you know, the tonality. But as far as a progression, you know, think of D minor. And then think of this like G sharp, what would this be? A G sharp sus2 flat 5. And then A major. So there's, you know, D minor, G sus2 flat 5, G sharp sus2 flat 5, and then A major to D minor. So that, you know, that 4 chord's very unusual, but it matches the tonality of that that exotic scale. And this is where Marty gets all those really, you know, exotic and sick sounding licks. You know, and stuff like that, you know, where he milks those notes and really brings out that exotic flavor. And he loves doing it with bends too. That's going to wrap this look at some exotic scales and modes. And I have had people ask, you know, definitely students, you know, in private lessons over the years, but then also on the channel too, just asking, you know, hey, can you cover, you know, scales a little bit deeper, or can you kind of go into, you know, scales and modes? And there's a lot, you know, this is just, you know, 5 scales is all I really shared here. There's a ton of, you know, major tonality scales. We didn't even get into like some of the diminished and augmented, you know, tonalities and different variations out there. So there's a lot. There's a big world of scales and modes out there. But these are all, you know, kind of loosely based around a minor tonality, and very, very common, like I said at the beginning of the lesson, you know, in rock and hard rock and metal, also jazz and fusion and classical, and even pop music sometimes will dip into some of these sounds. So this is really interesting, very useful. And until you really get in there and kind of get your hands dirty, it's really confusing too, where it's like, well, wait a minute, you know, how many scales are there? All right, leave some feedback and some comments. Please subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.